Hello everybody, Phoenix61 here with a Skull and Bones video today. So a new activity called, I guess, Defend, right, for your factories. So basically what happens is, every once in a while, I don't know how frequent, but you're going to get one of these Defend missions that pop up for one of your owned factories, right? So the concept is easy, but I think once you've got your factories leveled up higher, I think that's where the difficulty also goes up, right? So these have been pretty tough because thus far they've only happened at my factories that are level 10, right? Which is the max, right? So, but basically, fast travel to the nearest fast travel location, right? And then head towards it. The nice thing is with these, it does give you 30 minutes to sort of react, right? So you do want to join the event through the map, and then you can see the zone that you need to get into, right? And so you've got 30 minutes to like respond and join and get in the zone. But throughout that whole 30-minute window, you don't have to wait till the timer gets down to do it, right? So once you've joined the event and then you go into the zone, it's gonna just start it, right? So you can see you've got 9 minutes left up in the top right. And then once we get in the event area, it's going to drop it down to like 10 seconds, right? So then it's just going to start, right? So that is kind of the nice thing. The downside to just straight up ignoring it is what's going to happen is it's going to temporarily shut down your factory for 12 hours, right? So you'll lose that pieces of 8 production for the next 12 hours, and thus the same thing happens when you fail the defend as well. So that's a little bit of a bummer, right? So if you get in there, do the defend, you spend the time doing the defend, and then you don't make it, it's like, it's like super buzzkill, right? But the nice thing is, especially since it's still early in the season, I'm getting like tons of XP from killing these guys and doing this activity that, like, I think I got 2 or 3 smugglers past like token things just from doing this activity. And I think most of them were XP related, right? So like our Kingpin rank, you can see it over at the right, like we've almost got that bar full. So we're getting close to, earning 1 from that. And then I think there might have been some like particular activities, like do a defend, a complete one, or something like that for within the Smuggler's Pass challenges as well, right? So, but as you can see, it's wave based, right? So we already completed the first wave, but there is still this one guy here, right? So once you get in there, basically all you're doing is defending, right? So you can see up in the very, very top right of the screen, you can see like the fist or hand that's green. So that's the faction you're supposed to defend, right? And then the companion shows hostile to us, right? So that's who you're supposed to shoot, right? So occasionally you'll see an allied ship, that of the faction you're supposed to be defending, and they do kind of sort of help, but not really, right? They're there, they shoot, but it doesn't really do a lot, right? So, yeah, so there's that, right? And then this location was a little bit easier than one that I had to do before, where, it's got some guard towers, and for the most part, enemies are only coming from like 1 or 2, maybe 3 directions here, right? But like I had one that was more of an island that I had to defend, and what was happening is ships were spawning completely opposite of where I was, and then lobbing mortars onto the base from the complete opposite side, right? And it would take a while to shoot my own mortars over there and or drive around and try and finish those ships off. So I think what you'll run into, the challenge here is going to be keeping the factory alive, right? Because you can see its health bar at the top of the screen, right? So it's only lost a little bit so far, but as we get through the waves, it starts getting a little scary, right? So I think that's where the challenge is going to be, is killing ships quickly, right? And I think that's where the Sandook shines. So we are using my Sandook build here, and this is my build for like all out. Well, now it's my build for defense, but it is also my build for hostile takeovers, especially for PvP, right? So if you're interested in sort of my opinion, I'll go through the build at the end, but basically you can see we're using fire bombards all around the ship, with the exception of Zamzamas on the front. And the reason for that is there are gun ports below deck on the front of this ship. There are 4 more gun ports below deck. So for a total of 2 on top, 4 below deck, 4 cannons, right, on the front of the ship. That's non-existent for any of the other ships, I believe. Yeah, but like, so huge damage potential by having Zamzamas on the front. I think that's even better than any of the like bow weapons, like any of the flamethrowers, because with the Zamzamas, you're basically shotguns and they're fire variants, right? And so it takes the second for the trigger pull, and you're not sitting there aiming, right? So you can fire them and then turn and get shots with your bombards or whatever you're using on the sides, right? So I feel like just because of the speed of use, and how, like, it's just all damage all at once. Like, watch this, boosh, he's dead, right? Like, and then we get another smuggler's mark. So that I believe is the way to go with this ship for PvP and for defending here, right? At least for takeovers and these defends, right? I think if you're open water PvP, like there's probably some better builds out there, but this is just epic. I have not lost a hostile takeover with this build ever. I think I had one where like I had my group set to like open, and someone joined my group before the hostile takeover and then left my group like as it started, and so we weren't able to do damage to each other. And it took me too long to figure out that I wasn't damaging that player, and so he had like gotten more, like it glitched, right? And he had done more damage to just NPC regular enemy ships, and so he beat me out that way. But other than that, I have not lost a PvP hostile takeover. I am noticing like a lot of people with the hostile takeovers, a lot of people don't want to do PvP, right? So if they see somebody in the activity, they just won't join it, right? And so I've had ones where I've seen, a person in the hostile takeover, like they joined the event, and then when they see me join the event, then they leave it, right? So that, so that's what, but alas, I do have a couple of recordings where we've actually had some players in the PvP hostile takeover, so stay tuned for that, and we'll go through that as well. But ultimately, I'm using the same build for that as I am for these defends, right? So the reason we're using the Sandook is because of all of these fire perks that come with it, right? So that's why we have, with the exception of the flu, the poison auxiliary weapon, right? The mortar launcher. Everything else is fire variant, right? Fire bombards all the way around the ship, with the exception of the Zamzams on the front. There's another smuggler's mark earned, right? But what happens with the Sandook, right, is, if you don't know, you can set somebody ablaze, set them on fire, and if you watch, this ship to the right just got lit on fire as well. I hadn't even shot him, right, and he got set ablaze. There's a 5,000 damage explosion that happens as well when that happens. So that ship that was right next to that first guy is dead, and I didn't even shoot him, right? He just died. You can see him off to the right sinking. So I didn't even shoot that guy, right? So like I just lit somebody on fire next to him. He had the ablaze explosion effect triggered on him because he was so close to the enemy that I set ablaze, and then he burned, right? So just like, it's such an epic build for getting rid of lots of ships, especially when they spawn clumped together like they do in this, sort of game activity, right? So I think this is the way to go. I'm going to play with it some more because I think I've only done 3 of these since recording this video, right? So if I find out some more info, right? I'm actually kind of curious if you can equip a healing weapon and heal the base. I think that would be huge, but I don't know if that's a thing, right? But if that's possible, then that's going to be a way to go, because I haven't had issues with dying, and failing that way. I've had issues with the base being, either dying. The one time I did fail one of these, the base, lost too much health. As you can see, we're at about half now, right, for its health. And we're going through these enemies like, I don't know how to go through them any quicker, right? We're setting everybody on fire that we can, right? But yeah, so I think if you could use a healing weapon on the base, that's something I need to try out. But if anybody knows whether or not that works, please let me know in the comments, and then we'll maybe adjust the build accordingly, right? With like maybe one healing weapon on the back, or maybe the Ox weapon becomes a heal weapon, right? But as you can see, we did we set somebody ablaze here, and literally everybody next to him got lit ablaze too, and that does like trigger chain reaction too. So. You should really watch this one as we there's a good chunk of enemies coming from the river over here, and they're all in a nice little line, right? So I'm gonna dump the poison mortar right there. Sometimes they try to avoid hitting the mortars, so then they kind of like clogs them up, right? I'm gonna see if we can't get this guy on fire, and then when we get him, yeah, he's gonna die just right flat out. But watch as we set this first guy ablaze here, and then you'll see the chain reaction. Everyone behind him gets set ablaze. Boom, boom, boom. All of those guys are on fire. All of them lost 5,000 health from the ablaze explosions. And then they're also burning, right? So just like, that's the way to go to get rid of multiple ships at once, right? So this build, I think, is the way to go right now. But like I said, I've only done a handful of these, so if I find something better, I will let you guys know, and if you have suggestions for builds, please leave them in the comments, right? But here you can see we just lit everybody on fire by triggering a fire on one guy because they're so close together, right? So using our poison mortar, I'm finding that, like, you know, I think you could make the argument of having your Ox weapon be a fire variant as well. Those tend to be rockets, for one thing, and they just take, rockets just take a little bit longer to aim and deal with, right? Whereas the mortar, you just, you know, it's kind of dump it and forget it, right? So I'm going for sheer speed of damage, you know, as quickly as possible. And I feel like the rockets take a little bit more, you know, time to line up those shots, right? Whereas the mortar, I can just do the overhead look, dump it, and then forget about it, right? But yeah, so that's my rationale there. There's so much fire happening around, you know, between the fire bombards all the way around the ship and then the Zamzamas in the front. I feel like you don't really need, you know, the Ox weapon to also be a fire variant. So I'm going for speed, and with that poison, having it drain enemy stamina, that can be huge as well, especially in PvP, because then people can't do things like brace, and then it also forces them to stop and think about how they have to eat some food now, you know, like all that kind of stuff, right? So with the successful defend, it basically gives you a free supply run, right? So now we are producing pieces of 8 much faster, more efficiently, whatever you want to call it, right? So, and then like I said, if you fail it, or if you just ignore it, you're going to lose that factory is going to be just not producing for the next 12 hours, right? Which isn't terrible if you've got a whole bunch, right? Like losing one for 12 hours is not a huge deal, right? So, we will head back to St. Anne, and then I'll go through the build as well. One thing I want to call out too is, you know, you can see down the bottom left the like perks that I've got, right, from food items that I've eaten. So I have, you know, in my you know, my wheel or whatever you want to call it here, I'll bring it up in a second. I have one food variant in there that's for like fighting, right, basically. And then I have another, so this will be this one, right, the Very Bee Manaka. So I'm using these because they're all over the place, and the recipe's easy, right? So a lot of times I'm just getting them from sinking ships. But I use that one for defending and fighting, and then I use this one for this Gradro, right, that I can't say. I'm using that one for, like, speed, right? And then grilled food on the right, and then I either specifically assign a water flask or a water barrel here for speed, restoration kit here, because I feel like this is underused, right? If you're on fire or flooding especially, because flooding a lot of times is causing perma damage, like the severe damage, whatever you want to call it. You can stop that. You can stop it from growing. You can stop your severe damage from getting worse and worse and worse by using a restoration kit. So that can be huge, especially if you're not in like the bark or something that can heal severe damage just by itself, right? Or you don't have the armor piece that heals severe damage, right? So like, that is huge. I feel like that a restoration kit is underused by people, and part of why, like, when I set them ablaze in PvP events, they go down quick because they just sit there on fire and they just sit there and take it, right? So, so we did have one of the, you know, seasonal story missions is to do a defend activity and successfully complete it. I believe you have to successfully complete it. maybe you just need to do it, and then you'll turn it in at Yanita. So we will do that. Return to Yanita with the news of your success. So maybe you do have to be successful. I was like, maybe you just need to do it, but I'm assuming that for most people, the first time you have to do that, it won't be a level 10 factory. So I'm hoping that that's how it scales, right? So if your factory is like a level 4 or something, it should be significantly easier, right? But then she's got some dialogue that I'm ultimately going to skip through, right? And then, we did get 500 pieces of 8. I am noticing you're getting pieces of 8 more from activities and, the fancier chests and stuff like that, right? So, I'll go through the build really quick here. But, we kind of talked about it already throughout the video anyway. So weapons, like I said, I'm not a fan at least for the Sandook. I'm using the Zamzam 3s on the front. I feel like these, the gear score is 110, right? That's kind of the only downside. But, like, these things, you get 6 of them on the front when you equip one of these on the front, right? So that's huge. I feel like that's better than, one of these, like, flamethrowers or especially the, the ballista bolts, right? So, but you can see where it says gun ports here, it says 6, right? So, versus if you were to equip this, the blue Spectre, gun ports, it's 1, because you obviously only have the one blue Spectre, right? But like, that'll get your gear score up there. So if you needed this to get your ship up to level 12 or 13 even, maybe you would have to do that because the perks of having your ship up on the next level is pretty significant as well. And then the fire bombards, like I said, like they're a lower gear score than some of the other weapons, but I feel like it's the way to go for this build, right? So as you can see, like if we were to equip like fire long guns, so these are top deck weapons only, you can see where it says gun ports, it's 2, right? So because it's a top deck weapon only, you only get the 2, but with the Zamzamas, those go on top deck and below deck, so the gun ports is 6, so you're getting 6, right? So, and then fire bombards, all the highest ones you can get, fire bombards 3, all the way around the rest of the ship, right? Both sides and the back. And then for, because we're going after the fire damage, right? These even only have burning 1, but man, like with, stack this on top of the, the furniture pieces, and I'll go through that too. These, like, it's huge, right? And like the fire bombards, like they're great for close range and they're great for like medium to long range as well, right? Like not super long range, but so the flu, I can't say that, however that's pronounced, right? This is, I'm really using this mostly for the perks, right? Which is the release toxic fumes, right? So it's the poison, which just destroys enemy stamina, right? I think you could make an argument for either Rockets 3 or Termites. I think the Termites 3, if you're really going for like a siege build where you're going to do damage to structures, this is probably the way to go, where if you really want to be strong against structures. But honestly, like I would still, like, for battling ships, I wouldn't pick the rockets. They're tougher to hit enemies with. Like, you can get good at it, right? But like, it's just quicker. It's just quicker to dump a mortar, set it and forget, launch it and forget it, and then you can start focusing with your other weapons and do more damage quicker. Like that's my rationale for that choice, why I'm doing that. But so the putrefying perk is what I'm going for, where it says, dealing damage and sapping crew stamina. Damage from toxic fumes cannot be blocked by bracing, right? So like that's huge for PvP and PvE, right? Like that's great at helping fight ships, right? So that's why I'm picking this. I think you could make the argument of having something that's fire setting, but I just don't think you need it. I'd rather have this, right? I'd rather also be able to get rid of people's stamina, and I'm going to light them on fire crazy fast with all my other weapons anyway, right? Black Prince is still the way to go here, I think, right? So, I mean, there's some new armor sets coming out that you can do some pretty cool builds with, but honestly, like, the Sandook, part of its challenge is it's kind of lower health pool, right? And the perk of the Black Prince is going to be the reduces damage taken by 50% when the hull is less than 33%, right? So once you start getting low on health, this thing's gonna help you out significantly, right? So what I do, it happens to me all the time when I'm in doing hostile takeovers. I'm getting low on health, and people just can't get rid of me because I've got that paired with this Rigged Station, which recovers 1% hull health per second when hull health is less than 20%. So as they get me even lower, if I don't have a repair kit ready, right, we're auto healing basically, right? At least back up to 20%. Right, so that compared with the Black Prince, I think is huge, and it's definitely keeping me alive in those extreme situations where someone's almost got me dead, right? And I think it's like probably super frustrating for the other player, but Bombard works one. Basically, everything else here is fire-centric, right? So increase elemental damage multiplier of the Bombard by 19%. The other one was the the second furniture piece was triggers Ablaze faster, right? And so then this one increases damage to enemy ships with the Ablaze effect, right? So basically we're building into the the strengths of the ship. And then this one, I did pick the double-plated hull to get a little bit more health, because that's kind of one of the areas that the ship struggles, right? But I think there's a lot of stuff you could pick here, right? One that I'm kind of like on the fence about is the one that, and I'll see if I have it here, right? But the furniture piece that basically makes Ablaze and flooded effects last longer, which because of a ship being on fire, you're going to be able to do more damage to them. It kind of makes sense to do that, but you also have to think you get this perk where so there's some of this new furniture too. Oh no, wait, that's that one we've had. But like you have that perk where when you set them ablaze, it triggers anybody nearby to get set ablaze, and then it also does that 5,000 damage, right? So if they're being on fire lasts longer, right, then that is not happening as often, right? So, it's called Scorched, right? So, well, here's the perks for the ship, right? So this is what we're building into, right? This Scorched perk deals 5,000 burning damage when you apply the Ablaze effect, so when you set somebody on fire. And then Ablaze will be applied to enemies in a radius of 150 meters, so anybody that's near that ship that gets set on fire also gets set on fire and also takes that 5,000 burning damage. Increases damage to ship with the Ablaze effect by 50%, right? So you can have that looks like a chain reaction, right? Like when you do, when we saw it in the Defend, right? Basically anybody nearby, they're going to get lit ablaze, and then the next guy's going to get lit ablaze, right? And so, and then you're doing that 5,000 damage to everybody, right? So, we're up to 7 smugglers marks or whatever, top right. So, but yeah, so that is our build. That is how you do defends, right? So, I think if you're getting your factories up to that level 10 and you're starting to struggle, try this build out. Like I said, I'm not sure I think the next thing would be if healing weapons could work on healing the base, which, like, in my mind, I think that should be a thing, but in reality, it might not be, right? But just my humble opinion, because that's what, like, at this level, like, that's what my challenge has been, right? The one defend that I lost, was a level 10 one, and it's because I didn't die. It's because I couldn't save the base, right? I couldn't kill enemies quick enough. But if I could heal that base, that would be huge. So maybe we would put like the weapons in the back, or something. But alas, that is my video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, guys. That helps me to, motivates me to create more content for you. But we will see you next time. Until then.